Hi, everybody. Welcome to Conversations with Calvin, We the Species. And I always search the universe for elements and particulates of commonality. And it's really interesting because I'm with a really special guy, Sam Mitchell. And we connected a week or two ago. And we connected, and of course, looking at his background, the fact that he has autism and he's on the spectrum, highly functioning. He's got his own very, very successful podcast. He's an entrepreneur, and he's a Hoosier, which is very important because as I told him, I was just watching this movie last night, Hoosiers. Uh, uh, and as I mentioned to Sam, when I became a journalist 15 years ago, the first series of stories I did for a long time was on autism and the work that Rutgers University was doing and pioneering their work with autism. They built they built a student housing for kids on the spectrum, and they integrated the kids on the spectrum with students and mentors and mentees. So Rutgers is always at the forefront of doing a lot of work with kids on the spectrum. And I did a lot of stories. And the other thing about Sam and Sam is a big wrestling fan. And I've had two heavyweight World Wrestling Federation champions in my kitchen for dinner, Greg the Hammer Valentine and Tito Santana. And I had Darren Antola, who was the producer of 350 Days, a documentary about wrestlers. And the meaning of that is they have to work 350 days a year to make a living, and it's kind of tough. But Sam, and just reading and studying up, I mean, Temple Grandin, Dr. Temple Grandin, who I mean, I saw the movie on your podcast, and I mean, you've done some amazing work. So for me, a big thrill to combine, commonality with your journey. It really is for me, and be able to share you and the work you've done means a lot to me. So, without further ado, I want to introduce Sam Mitchell. Sam, just a little bit of your background, and then we're going to do some interesting conversation. Take it away.
Okay, so my background is I'm Sam Mitchell. I run a podcast called Autism Rocks and Rolls. It's a podcast about autism. Through the podcast, it's grown so much. I developed sponsors, a board of 6. I'm an event planner I plan local autism acceptance events in Indiana, which is where I'm from. I also do motivational speaking services. I've spoken in Oklahoma, Orlando 3 times, Canada twice, Stuart, Florida, and Washington, D.C. I was a keynote speaker in Daniels, West Virginia, and I did a work conference in Columbus, Ohio.
Wow. And by the way, I kind of pull this from, it's kind of a logo. It's Autism Rocks and Rolls, now
Hey,
501c.
sure.
Yep. So my printer wasn't printing great, but I just wanted, it's kind of a neat picture. So let's get down to some interesting questions, and I'm going to learn about this stuff. I've learned about it. I'm going to continue to learn about it. So what does autism mean to you?
Well, I'll be honest. A lot of people have asked me that before, and I've actually asked that to my guests all the time. But to me, it means a different way of thinking. We think outside of the box. We're not the same species sometimes as ordinary man or women because the way we think sometimes is just mind blowing. And I'm saying that in a bad way and in a good way because sometimes you're like, how do you solve this? Or why can't I get through this head? Or why are we at the park because of a broken tooth? It's mind blowing.
Okay. Now, I'll take that question myself. What does having autism mean to me? It means as much as I think I know, I don't understand a lot. And I've done 7 or 8 stories. I've spent days of my life in various schools, learning, absorbing. But it continues to be a bit of a mystery. It's in the news. It's in the news often because they're trying to hook that up with vaccines and some of the ingredients in vaccines. So and the work I did with Rutgers University, since I'm a Rutgers alumnus, and the fact that they were doing a lot of pioneering work with autism, building a whole residence hall and enrolling students on the spectrum at Rutgers University. Also, they're working with Rutgers was going to be hiring kids on the spectrum to work for them for like forever. So it still means to me, and hopefully you'll be able to kind of shed some light and even more understanding. It's still a little bit of a mystery because it's not close to me, and now I'm going to be learning even more about it. So, Sam, how would you say autism affects your daily life?
Well, it affects my daily life because the way I live it. I mean, it's not going anywhere. Let's be honest. There are people trying to like cure autism. Blah, 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 blah. Heck no. No, 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 no. It's not a disease. I'm not going to say who, but there's a politician who pretty much said it's a disease and it's going to kill people. Really? Really? Hey, you're funny because I don't recall me being around someone and then next thing you know, oh, because I was around them, they're dead. Not that's fiction.
Okay. Okay. Um, a kind of a segue. So, what are some of the occurring conditions that can come with autism?
Well, I think there's a lot. There's ADHD, which is what I have. I have really bad ADHD. So, for example, if there was a swarm of bees on me right now, and thankfully there isn't, I'd be too focused on the bees and I wouldn't be able to do this interview. That's for example of mine. But then there's others that have anxiety. There's others that have stomach issues. They can have this thing called gastritis, which means they have a hard time digesting foods. It could be sleep issues. I have sleep apnea because I think of the ADHD. People think it's the autism, which it could be. I think it's ADHD because my mind never stops turning. And it could also be depression, bipolar. There's so much co-occurring conditions that come with autism. I always like to say the autism is probably going to be the steak, but there's going to be some fries with it.
Okay. Okay. Interesting. I never, in all of the work I've done with it and trying to study it, I never realized that there were other conditions that were associated with it. Um, so, what advice would you give to someone else who has autism?
Really hang in there, and someone's going to find you interesting. There's 8 billion people on Earth,
Like that.
and people on the autism spectrum have said, oh, no one's going to find me interesting. You're funny because that's wrong. Someone's going to. It may not be who you expect. It could be a World War II veteran, a 60-year-old woman, a 48-year-old widow, a 48-year-old divorced man. Someone will, though. It may not be someone you expected or your age even, but it's going to be someone that's not family.
Okay.
Through this podcast journey, I've met several people who have found me interesting from all walks of life. Some have been mothers, some have been fathers, some have been just ordinary people who think I'm cool, apparently, for some reason. I don't know why people think I'm cool because I can be a bit of a dork. But anyway, I also met people on the spectrum who think I'm all right. And then I met even elders who think I'm cool.
Okay. Um, by the way, off topic, I always like to throw in a couple off topic questions. Do you have any favorite movies?
Well, I'm going to be honest with you. I'm not much of a movie buff. I was more of a television series guy. And
Okay.
that's ADHD. Movie buff is I can't sit still for more longer than 30 minutes.
Okay.
And it's the worst time at the movie theater. I watched Endgame, and it was a great movie. But by the end of it, or getting close to the very, very end, I was like, okay, speed this up a little bit.
Okay. Okay. I always throw that question in because I'm an old movie guy myself, and I wrote my first novel because I watched this movie Casablanca and because of that, I wrote a novel, and that got me started in my whole new life. Um, you've done, and it's funny. I just saw a video the other night about the whole world of TEDx talks, and I never realized just how deep and involved this is. So you did a TEDx talk. What was that about? I can kind of
It
guess.
was called and why it was why those on special needs structure. I did it through an analogy of pinball. Pinball is one of my special interests. I figured let's go into that topic a little more and just talked about why we need structure. We need structure in life because it's our sense of comfort. It is really our sense of comfort because we know what to expect. We hate the unknown. We hate not knowing what's going to happen. We hate not knowing if we're not going to get chocolate or vanilla ice cream. We have to know what frosty we're going to get at Wendy's before we go through the drive-through.
Okay. It's funny you said pinball. One more. I didn't know this, but we have it's called Silver Ball Museum, and it's in a place called Asbury Park down the Jersey Shore, and they have probably 150 Gottlieb and Williams pinball machines there. And every once in a while, I'll go there, and for $3 or $4 or $5, you stay there for an hour or two, and you play the pinball machine. I grew up as a kid in Newark, New Jersey, and my whole life was pinball machines. So upstairs in the extra bedroom, there's a Gottlieb pinball machine that needs to get fixed because I could play it.
Hey, I'm in the basement. It needs to get fixed too.
Yeah. Well, find a repairman. I'll send them over to you. I mean, that was my life as a kid. You know, it was baseball. Television only had like 8 channels, and it was all black and white. And so it was television, it was baseball, and it was pinball machines. That was my world growing up. So as soon as I can, I want to get that pinball machine fixed. Um, is there, Sam, is there a rewarding? Tell me what you think is the most rewarding and the most difficult part of having autism.
Well, the most difficult part, I've asked this question too on my podcast. The most difficult part, I would say, is when people don't understand. When people don't understand what I'm trying to say, that gets so aggravating. And it's because sometimes I talk too fast. I'm not clear in my communication, yet I think I'm perfectly clear,
Yeah,
but
you are.
they don't see it that way for some reason.
Oh,
But the most rewarding is the creativity that I have. I can think outside the box and come up with unordinary solutions. And if I have autism, now those solutions wouldn't exist.
wow. So, and listening to you, so it's actually you've made it into a huge plus in your life in what you're accomplishing, and of course, autismrockandrolls.com. People should go there. I was there. I checked it out. It's a fascinating place, and what you've done with that. Um, Another kind of introspective question. What would you say? How can others be more accepting with people with autism?
They can be accepting by not judging us if we have a meltdown, for one thing. But another thing that people can do to be more accepting is show us some slack to a point. I mean, should we have expectations? Yes. We shouldn't be shoplifting because we're on the spectrum. No, that's a law. You don't break it. But if there's a sensory overload meltdown because the freezer's too cold at Walmart, who cares? Just let's move to the next aisle.
Okay. Okay. This is an interesting question. We've touched on some of your hobbies, um, uh, and so you have a collection of hobbies, including professional wrestling, rock and roll music. By the way, your rock and roll music, 2 miles from my house lives Bruce Springsteen,
Wow.
and yeah, and it's funny, literally 2 miles. And when I began my journalism, I began it actually, I told you, with autism. And then I started getting involved in the Jersey Shore, Asbury Park music scene with Bruce Springsteen at the top of the list because he lives here. And a few years ago, I joined the gym in my town. And my very first day at the gym, I was working out on a machine, and I looked to my right at the next machine, an abductor adductor machine, and who's on the machine, 6 inches away from me? Bruce Springsteen. And as it turns out, he and I were on the same exercise routine 3 times a week from 10:30 to 11:30. So I saw Bruce Springsteen 3 times a week for an hour for 2 years. And then the pandemic hit. I didn't really talk to him much because that's his world. I didn't want to interfere with his world, but there's one of the world's great rockers right next to me working out. It's kind of cool. Um, but how do your hobbies like wrestling and rock and roll and fishing and broadcasting, how does that help you manage?
Well, I think for one thing, it gives me something to do for sure. But the other is if you look, each part involves structure. Wrestling is choreography. What's the word? Um, choreography.
Correct. It's all planned out. Yes.
Fishing, kind of choreography because you have to be patient. That's the structure. Broadcasting, some people have to edit their podcast or watch the video. There's some structure with broadcasting. Then rock and roll music, that one's kind of where I draw the line, but there's still some structure to it because what happens with music if you get a bad song and it's out of the mess? It stinks. Because some of these rock and roll music, there's no structure to it. If you notice, like Queen, they have a basic beat. It's
Mm-hmm.
some are just and it's no sense.
Mm-hmm. Um, I have an off-topic question I like to ask from time to time. Uh, um, you don't necessarily have to answer it, but excluding family or friends, somebody living or dead you'd like to spend the day with.
Well, there's a lot of people on that list, but
Well, you could throw a few at me.
I know, I know. Definitely this would be a surprising one, but maybe it's because I'm too country for it. Johnny Cash.
Great, great.
Johnny Cash because the story and when he got better, he seems like he shared it and wanted to do good for it. And he just seemed like a humble type of guy. Maybe not when he was on drugs, drinking, passing out, but after that time span.
Okay, great answer. It's funny. I recently watched a couple of weeks ago. I recently watched that Bob Dylan, uh, A Complete Unknown, that biopic about Bob Dylan, and a big part of Bob Dylan's early life was Johnny Cash. And I never knew that. They were friends and they corresponded. And Johnny Cash loved Bob Dylan, and Bob Dylan loved Johnny Cash. I never realized that because Johnny Cash was folk, and Dylan. I mean, Johnny Cash was country, and Bob Dylan was folk at the time. But Johnny Cash was prominent in that movie. Um, tell me a little bit about Autism Rocks and Rolls. How did this get started? And what do you see as a future for Autism Rocks and Rolls?
Well, it started I joined my high school's media club, and I found a lot of the podcasting so much. I decided to start my own podcast. That was when Autism Rocks and Rolls was born. But I want to see this go into where now it's becoming a side gig, but I want it to be a full-time gig where I can get fully time paid. Because I'm actually out of college now looking for a job. And part of the time, I'm not going to lie, I wish I could just not find a job, wake up from the bed and be like, all right, Autism Rocks and Rolls agenda. Oh, I have to find a job. Oh, I know I don't. This is working full time.
Okay, okay. Uh, and I've been listening to some of this, and it's really quite good. and fascinating. And now it's a 501c, and you're raising money, and I think that's great too. I don't know what money is. I just do this podcasting because I keep busy as an old guy, and I'm an old guy, by the way. I've been practicing longevity. I'll be 80 in 2 months. And that's kind of an old guy, yet this thing works really well. I've been practicing techniques in longevity since
Well,
1960.
let's keep working as long as we can. How about that?
Correct. Yes, 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 yes. Um, and kind of winding down, and I've always, when I saw that movie about Temple Grandin, I mean, it just kind of blew me away. So she's a famous autism activist, Dr. Temple Grandin. And she said, what would happen if the autism gene was eliminated from the gene pool? You would have a bunch of people standing around in a cave, chatting and socializing and not getting anything done. So, what does that quote mean to you, Sam?
The quote means people on the spectrum get things done, where some people just procrastinate and procrastinate and procrastinate. That's not people with autism. They will get an assignment, for example. You tell them it's due Friday and it was assigned Monday, they're going to get it done Monday night or Tuesday during the day. That's how proactive they are, because in their brain, it settles in, and the more they listen, the more it's going to annoy them. And once something annoys us too much, we get over it, and we're going to get over it. So, to avoid getting over it, we're going to do the assignment.
Okay. Yeah, as I kind of reading your bio. If you have some comments on this, I made it to the top 10 in the People's Choice Podcast Awards, and you placed second in the state of Indiana for the JAG entrepreneurship. Uh, you want to make some comments? I mean, I just think no matter what, that's just great stuff.
Huh. Well, the People's Choice Podcast Awards, I didn't know about until my mom told me. My mom told me, hey, you're on the top 10 for the People's Choice. Oh,
Wow.
didn't realize how big of a it was, but okay. And then for JAG, it's not funded anymore due to government, but it was still to help people develop job skills. I was using Autism Rocks and Rolls as an entrepreneurship program, and there were a lot of candidates in Indiana. So out of the whole state in Indiana, and I think the region too, I got second place.
Wow. I mean, that's just great. I just marvel at listening to you and reading about you. And by the way, I'm looking here. Uh, I'm looking at my notes. You've had some really impressive names on your podcast. You had Armani Williams, who I don't even process this. He was the first NASCAR driver to open up about having autism. I mean, he's a NASCAR driver, and he's on your podcast and he's talking about having autism. I mean, that's a wow. And you also had James Durbin, who's a rocker, also on the spectrum, and with Tourette's. So you've really, and of course, Temple Grandin was on your podcast. So I tip my hat to you. These are some great people you've had on.
Well, I appreciate it, my friend. I really appreciate just the compliments, and it's showing that I'm doing something right, which I always want to have the opportunity to help out people, but never had the opportunity to until I had my podcast.
Yeah. Well, borrowing a line from one of my favorite movies, you know what, Sam, you did good. You did good, and I'm thrilled to meet you. And I'm actually inviting you to come back. Hey, come back anytime. We can sit and chat about this stuff because I'm there. Whether it's wrestling or whatever, the whole rock and roll thing. I really appreciate the fact that we connected. And in the minute I saw that notice from you, and I said, "This is great," because I've been in that world. I'm trying to understand, and I understand, and I've been there. as a journalist. So I am inviting you to come back anytime, and we
Go
can
ahead. If you
continue.
want me back, find me. I'm not a hard guy to find, clearly.
Perfect. Perfect. I'm not a hard guy to find. I sit in this chair 12 hours a day. I mean, that's all I do. I do some writing. I'm working on my third book. And I do this, and this is a passion. The podcasting is just a wonderful place to meet people like yourself. So, uh, again, I really thank you so much for your time and for the work you're doing, because I think it's great stuff, Sam. And please come back. I'm going to stop recording. Don't leave. We'll do a 2-minute wrap. And again, thank you so much.